So who
I
all has come?
have started the recording.
Okay.
So welcome everybody. I think we will start in a minute. That should be right, Nimish? Let's give
Yeah,
1
yeah,
minute.
Yeah, 1 minute we can give. This is talk number 21, right?
Yes.
21 and 22. Oh, today is 20th, right? 20th, 20th, 21, 22.
Okay. There's some pattern.
Some weird numbering system.
And there are 19 people on the call. So 19,
Oh my
20,
goodness.
22.
I hope this will become 23.
I'm in the middle of RK Joshi is happening.
RK Joshi is happening, right? Yeah.
I think we should start, I think, no?
All right. Okay, guys, welcome everybody who joined, and most welcome those who couldn't join but are seeing this video. I just want to do a brief introduction of our speaker, so give me a few minutes. But before that, I would say the topic which we are going to talk about, I truly believe we are very passionate about. It's a huge topic. There are different perspectives involved in this. This session particularly has a theme of social entrepreneurship and climate change, but it is about how to mobilize grassroots to take action, individual actions. Most important is to really understand the persona, understand the perspective our guest is trying to bring. This is not set up for a debate kind of format, but any contrarian point of views are most welcome. But understand the forum is to understand the perspective. And I think the end goal for us from these kind of talks should be that how can we understand the perspective and mobilize our collective self in order to help the individual or the cause. So this is the goal. So I will start with introduction to our guest. So climate change is one of the hot topic of our age, and we are very passionate about it. We are highly appreciative also about the social entrepreneurship part. Our guest today, Prachi Shevgaonkar, combines climate change with social entrepreneurship. So here's a little bit about her, which I plagiarized from the web. So pardon me, Prachi. Prachi is a founder and chief of an initiative called Cool the Globe. As a young individual, she was troubled by the impact of climate change and decided to do something about it. Her idea is to inspire individuals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. She has won many accolades and is a great inspiration. She has since then been mobilizing global citizens to fight climate change through technology, innovations, and grassroots actions. She spent months covering stories of youth, farmers, waste picker communities, and citizen groups to understand the impact of climate change in the daily lives of the people. She firmly believes that when ordinary citizens come together, miracle can happen. She has also helped several sustainable initiatives and businesses craft a communication strategy. She has researched and presented paper on the role of behavioral change theories in battling anthropogenic, I hope I'm pronouncing the word right, anthropogenic climate change. She has also been invited as a guest lecturer and expert speaker on climate action for WWF Model Conference 2021, International Pop Festival, National Conference on Urban Sustainability, and multiple schools, university, corporates, Rotary clubs, and citizen groups. She is honored with few very coveted awards already. for her work for environmental protection. And guess what? She's just 29 years old. So I will call all of us to welcome Prachi Shevgaonkar, our special guest for today's discussion. Prachi, I'm sure I have not mentioned so many things about you. Why don't you give a brief overview of what got you started?
Right. Okay. Can you hear me, Pradyum?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Thank you so much for this introduction. And thank you so much for everybody who has joined. I know it's a weekday and it's a morning for many. And I'm always surprised to see so many people come in, especially when they know we're going to be talking about climate change. Because my first introduction to climate change was in school. In lectures about the environment, and whenever climate change would pop up, I remember I used to roll my eyes and think, oh, not another boring lecture again. So this was my only introduction to climate change before, and so I had a very long journey in even figuring out why is it something that I want to work on, and I'm sure we would talk about that over the course of this. But just to give a brief about me, I have an initiative called Cool the Globe, which helps citizens reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions to a target. The belief is that huge transformations take place with small changes in our day-to-day life. And over the course of this journey, I've realized that our actions have a very big power. And when I decide to take an action in my own life, it inspires 10 other people around me. And it has the power to even create larger systemic changes. And that's the idea around Cool the Globe. So that's essentially who I am and what I do. But I'm sure you'd get to know a lot more over the course of this conversation.
Very nice. And so I know that you have your dad was from IT Bombay, right?
Right.
And to give our audience a general background about where did you grow up, what kind of schooling you had, and I think we have discussed you also had very unorthodox schooling.
Right. So I went to a school called Akshar Nandan in Pune. And it was an experimental kind of a school. We would learn by experiences. We did not used to have marking systems. We, for the longest time, we would not have uniforms. We used to wear whatever we wanted. We used to have lectures where we would self-learn. We'd sit wherever we want, sometimes under the tree, sometimes on top of a tree, and learn ourselves. So that's percolated even now. So today I was working in the garden. So that's kind of the atmosphere that the school set up. And I think one of the key things that I remember on how my schooling has affected me reaching where I am today is, so one day I remember my school teacher gave us a very interesting homework. She asked us to write a letter to our future selves. 10 years from now, where would I want to be? Who would I want to be? And I remember I wrote that letter and then completely forgot about it. What happened, the interesting thing that happened was 10 years later, I was at a very decisive point in life. You must know my father is from IIT Bombay. He was an engineer. My mother is also an engineer. So is my sister, everybody else in my family. And I was also about to become an engineer, but something didn't feel right. Now, the interesting thing that happened was that my school sent those letters back to us. The letter that my younger self had written to the Prachi she had aspired to be. And in that letter, I had written about making an impact, changing the world. And reading it was like a wake-up call. So I decided to go into, I started looking for what are the other alternatives that would suit me, that I should be looking at. I realized that I wanted to become an engineer only because I didn't know what else I could be doing. So I decided to enroll into a media school, which felt more like my calling. And inspired by the words and the dreams of my younger self. That's when I began a journey to figure out how can I make an impact in my day-to-day life as an ordinary citizen. And I think that sort of led me to then discovering Cool the Globe. So I think now that I look back, the roots of that unconventional education percolate today. So I think that is one key experience that I shared about how my school impacted me.
So I guess I think schooling definitely, that unorthodox schooling definitely made an impact. But I would guess most of the kids have that aspiration. I'm sure besides school, your upbringing, your environment, or your parenthood must have also promoted you to be who you are. Isn't that right? Because I
Absolutely.
tell story about my parenthood. They forced me to become an engineer, and my conviction was not strong enough. So that's why I'm asking.
No, definitely. So, in fact, I remember when I was a young, when I was very young, maybe 10 years old or something, I remember one day coming home very fed up. I came home stomping my legs. I saw my mother and I asked her, how can I ever do something great? And I told her all the lessons that I learned in history classes, innovators, freedom fighters, people who have changed the world, they've all seen great struggle in life. I've heard stories of people who fought through extreme poverty, people who've studied under the lamp, crossed mountains to reach the school. And here I am. I have a perfectly happy childhood. I'm a normal girl in a middle class household. I go to school, I play with my friends, I do my homework. How can I ever do something great? Is what I asked her. And she said to me, you want to bring about change. You're asking this question, how can I do something great? You have that desire, that's what matters. You can be anybody you want to be. And I think that's one of the biggest support that my parents and upbringing have provided me to to show me that I can be anybody I want to be. And I think that is the most important um, job of parenting to show kids that they can be um, whatever they want.
Very, very interesting. By the way, I just wanted to say the schooling system that you're talking about is still very new concept, and orthodox for sure. Elon Musk has that belief system. He has around 5 or 6 kids, and he never sent those to conventional school. He has a similar kind of thing. The no grading, you don't go from one class to another class only once in a year or those kind of thing. Yeah. So you, after your schooling, you went to media school, which was Symbiosis.
Yeah.
So your specialization was in media school. When you came out from that was your time for making a determination to do something impactful?
So I had this, I told you, I when I took this decision to take up an unconventional path, and I'm sure all the people who are here today have had that decision in their life, because all of you have also decided to take an unconventional route. So when you make that decision, you start thinking about why you're doing it. And for me, it was always, how can I make an impact in my day-to-day life? So throughout my college years, that is the journey I saw into figuring out how could I make an impact. So while I was in college, I decided that I'm going to figure this out. What could I wanted to go to media school because it would allow me to reach out to a lot of people. It would allow me to communicate with a lot of people, and that's what I wanted to learn. But it's not what I wanted to do. I did not want to work in an advertising agency, so that was still point to this thing. So what I decided to do was I started reaching out to social entrepreneurs, other people who inspired me, who I thought were doing something meaningful in their life. And one of them was a farmer called Jnaneshwar Bodke, who lived in Pune, where my college was. And he had a very extraordinary story. So 20 years ago, he had a small 1 acre barren land in his family, and he was working as a peon in some company. And he asked himself, how can I turn this barren 1 acre land profitable? And generations in his family had seen agriculture being a very unprofitable industry, and that's why his parents had pushed him to take up a job instead of going to farming. But something still was drawing him towards that. So he decided to give 1 year of his life to go back to agriculture, and he took a small loan from a bank to be able to do that. And he started, he took a loan to build a poly house, and he started organic farming. Now 1 year later, what happened was that the bank manager came to his house, and his father got very scared. He thought they had land in debt. But instead, the bank manager touched his father's feet, fed him sweets, and told him, your son has begun a revolution. He's the first ever farmer to repay a loan of 10 lakh rupees to our bank and gain profits. So neighboring farmers from neighboring villages started hearing about this story, and they started coming to him asking how they could replicate this model. And from this, he started a club called Abhinav Farmers Club, a group farming initiative, which has today grown into a nationwide enterprise with over 1.5 lakh farmers coming in from earning a revenue of 400 crores. So I had heard about his story. And one day when I was still in college, I went to his house. I sat, it was a very nice, quiet farm right in the middle of the city, right in the middle of the IT sector in Pune, in fact. And I was offered warm milk taken straight from the cowshed. And so I met him and I asked him, I want to learn from you. Can I shadow you for a few months? And he was kind enough to agree. And so for the next few months, I traveled with him across Maharashtra, interacting with farmers. And I saw the same success formula that he had run on his 1 acre farm replicate across lands in Maharashtra. And I saw him meeting with different kinds of people, from banks to other farmers, inspiring them, telling them his story. To people who had lost their land, to celebrities who wanted to do a story and do a film on him. So I had these different kinds of experiences with him. And so my biggest learning in college years was through meeting other social entrepreneurs like him, which is what I did for the longest time. I met another social entrepreneur called Nalini Shekhar here in Bangalore. Maybe I'll tell about her now. I think that'll be a long answer to your question. Okay, so she's a social entrepreneur who's the founder of initiative called Hasrudala. And she is among other things, their organization is helping place workers become entrepreneurs and become self-sustainable. And just like him, I went to her also and I told her, I want to share for a few months. I want to see the work you do and how you are making a big impact. She said, what is it that you're looking for by doing this? I told her I want to be inspired. And she said, if you want to be inspired, don't spend time with me, spend time with the community. And so for a few months, I spent time with waste workers in Bangalore. And they welcomed me into their homes, their communities, their workplaces. And over there, I saw so many inspiring people, change makers, who are making a small difference in their community. For example, I met a very woman who was the listening ear of her community. Young and old alike, people would come to her, problems, take her advice, and I saw what difference she was making in that small community. I met an old man who, after retirement, had made it his mission to make society a zero waste zone. I met a woman who, in her small hut, had given shelter to a homeless mother and she was sponsoring that young boy's education, who was in no way related to her. I met a young mother who was about my age, and she, when I met her, she was Um, I walked 5 kilometers with her to the nearest school, where she asked if her daughter could be enrolled into class. You know, she was my age, but she already had a daughter. She was married. But the school couldn't enroll her daughter because she didn't have the necessary documents. She was a refugee from a nearby place. But this woman, she didn't give up. For the next 2 months, every single day, she walked she walked to that school every morning. She sat at those doorstep and she demanded that her daughter get a place in the classroom. And finally, the school saw a way around the technicalities, around the language barriers, and her daughter got a place in the class. So saw people like that who are taking a small stand in their day-to-day life, making some sort of a difference through their actions. And I realized that, you know, we have change makers all around us. So I think in my college years, taking that initiative to go out of my comfort zone and see the world around me, see other social entrepreneurs, what they were doing, and meet so many people. That's what helped me the most in that whole journey.
So on that topic, let me ask you about social entrepreneurship. I don't think there is a confusion or a myth in our group, because most of the people are very passionate about that social entrepreneurship part. And I would add to what you were saying about that farmer story. That is very very inspiring. In fact, we have few people on our forum who have been involved in this organic farming and trying to do that sustainable development kind of stuff. But I wanted to ask you, as a kid, when you are picking a profession, social entrepreneurship versus entrepreneurship in general, where maximizing your gain, which can be financial or anything, is on one side, and social is completely different. To some extent, it is pole apart. It's very different than entrepreneurship. General entrepreneurship, as a general businessman, they want to change the world, but maximizing their own gain is more important, versus social entrepreneurship is more about the collective self, not about maximizing just your own gain, or not at the start of it. How do you see social entrepreneurship from the normal business? Now you are a business lady, you're creating a business. How do you see that difference, that as a social entrepreneur versus the typical business people?
Right. No, that's a very good question. And growing up, all I thought was that the only way you can make a difference is by dedicating your life to something. Those are all the stories I had heard of social workers. I had heard stories of social workers who would sacrifice, dedicate their life to a cause, change their entire lives. And I always thought not all of us can do that. How can I, as an ordinary citizen, make a difference? So that didn't seem plausible to everybody. On the other hand, we had heard stories of industrialists and how profit driven they were. And I thought, that can't be the end goal. I would see people around me. My mother, when she turned 50, she started looking for purpose. She started looking back at her life and what she had achieved and what she had actually done. And she started, finding out, she started moving towards community service and how she could lead the next half of her life with purpose. I saw that same thing happening with so many people around me, where, they would live out their professional lives, reach a point of 50. For some people it would be earlier, for some it would be later, but then they would look back and see, what have I changed, what have I done, and then in the next phase they would start seeking out how could they make how could they join meaning and purpose in their professional careers. So I think we all do have an innate need to make a difference, so our professional lives don't have to be very different than that need to bring about change. I feel that both of them can go hand in hand. These two extremes of running behind money or profit, and running only behind a cause. These two extremes are not possible for people. That's not how we are wired. So I think social entrepreneurship today or in the future um, would not be a different area. I think that's where all businesses are naturally transitioning. All businesses today have to think about how they are serving their community, how their products, their offerings are making a difference. Um, so I think that's where we will naturally lead. The CSR has become mandatory for corporates. Um, all corporates want to so many organizations with Cool the Globe also today approach us saying that we want to do something about sustainability. What can we do? So all businesses and people have that pulse to bring about change, to impact their community. And so I think the future of social entrepreneurship is just entrepreneurship. All entrepreneurship is going to be social. For me, that seemed like uh, a very attractive option, because I was looking for not just how I can bring about change, but how can everybody around me bring about change. When it's a middle ground, I think that allows ordinary citizens like us to rise up. I think each one of us spend 80,000 hours in our at work in our professional life. And if we're going to spend so much time at work, we might as well look at how that's making an impact. So I think that's what social entrepreneurship is today, and that's where it's leading in the future.
That's a very good point. I think what I take away from what you were saying, I think any good person starting from their self-interest side to become a businessman, or somebody being very altruistic, thinking about the collective self, starting as a social entrepreneurship, probably can end up at the same place. Somebody very successful in the business, they go on creating charity and foundation, and they realize it later part. And also, I gather what you're saying is there is not so much sacrifice involved as there might be stigma involved with social entrepreneurship, right? You are an icon, you're living a good life. I'm sure you may be liking nice shoes and clothes. You can do all of those things. But more important is that you have satisfaction that you're making that change from the get-go. You said something that was very interesting, that the future of any entrepreneurship would look like more like social entrepreneurship. And that is true when everything gets automated, when labor force is not the same, not everyone is required, when we have more useless class involved, I think we will turn towards social entrepreneurship. Now, I want to come to the core of what you're doing to inspire all of us. So you chose climate change. I would start with that. Why did you choose climate change?
Right. So, one day when I was still in college, I remember doing a Google search. What is the biggest problem in the world today? And that's when climate change popped up. And I was very surprised to see that, because all of these global scientists, experts, organizations were talking about how climate change is one of the most pressing issues in front of us today, and that we only have 3 decades to avoid its worst effect. But then nobody around me was really talking about it. So I started reading more about it, what it's leading to. I read about the rising temperatures, the changing weather patterns, rising sea level, coastal erosion, loss of biodiversity, all of those things. And I saw all of that, and it felt like something very big, something very worrying was happening. But then at the end of all of it, I had a moment of honesty with myself, and I thought, I don't really care enough about it. I mean, I was 18. I had a lot on my plate. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to do extracurriculars, give exams. Why would polar ice melting in some other corner of the world be something that I care about? And so I kept climate change at the background for a while. And I started doing all of these other things, that I told you about. I met different kinds of social entrepreneurs. I volunteered for NGOs that worked in education. I spent time throughout study centers in slum areas of Pune, with waste workers, with farmers. And in all of these areas I went, somehow climate change kept coming back in. So I remember meeting a 12-year-old boy in a slum not very far from my house. And when I met him, I asked him, if you could get one wish and you could ask for anything, it would come true, what would you ask for? And he said, I would wish that my house wouldn't get flooded like it did last year. Now, this was around in the same area as me, and it was when it had rained a lot, in the year before. One night, catastrophic rains had come in, and I had got news of water flooding into the buildings of the slums. But I didn't think that it would mean that a 12-year-old boy would have to worry about something as basic as a shelter above his head. So I realized that climate change is impacting our homes, and this is something that I care about. I remember meeting a very bright young girl who, when I was volunteering for an NGO that worked in education. And when I met her, I asked her, which standard are you in? She said, I don't go to school anymore. Why is that? It was because her house got water only for 2 hours in the afternoon, and nobody else at home could afford to, come from their jobs and stay at home during that time. So she had to skip her school, stay at home so she could fill buckets with water. And this was around the same time our city was seeing a drought. So water was being used scarcely throughout the city. Little did I know it would mean that a very bright girl like her would have to skip school to fill buckets with water. So I realized that climate change is impacting our basic needs like water. I told about that very, very inspiring girl who was around my age, who spent months going every day to the school, badgering the school to enroll her daughter into the classroom. She was a climate refugee, and millions of other refugees like her who have to get displaced from around the world and rebuild their lives from scratch, often with children in hand. This is something that I cared about. I remember, on that night that, it had flooded a lot and near my home. Even my friend's home had gotten filled with water. The next morning, I went to see the aftermath of what had happened. And I saw an old couple with a vegetable cart, and they were trying to retrieve their only source of income, their vegetable cart, which was destroyed in the flood. That's when I realized that climate change impacts our livelihoods. It impacts our income. And for a lot of people, it impacts their ability to fend for their families. And this is something that I did care about. I remember meeting a farmer who had told me that, he just can't afford to keep farming anymore because the weather has gotten so unreliable. And when I can't afford to grow food, there are so many people behind me who can't afford to buy food, he said to me. So climate change impacts our food. So it's when I met these people behind these catastrophic effects of climate change I had read about, that's when I realized that this is something that I do care about. As ordinary citizens, we care about very simple things. We care about our home, our food, our livelihoods, our families, and the people around us. So when I realized that, yeah.
Sorry,
So when I realized that climate change is impacting these things, that's when I started asking myself, what is it then that I can do about it?
Very nice. So I think we all probably understands the impact of climate change about water and food contamination, disasters, or this climate refugees are the biggest disaster to the global civilization which we are talking about. But you had some very front row seat to really feel it. That inspired you. Now I want to get in your product area, and then afterward probably we'll open it for questions. If anybody has any question, please post your question as a text, or if you post your question, we will know what question you want, and we can probably point it to you. But Prachi, I wanted to ask you, with all that inspiration and all that mission that you inculcated in your mind, now you have an initiative. Let's talk about that initiative, what that initiative does, and what you want your audience, who is your audience, and what you want your audience to do.
Right. So I'll talk a bit about, how it started and, what it led to. So all of this realization I had that climate change is something that I care about, that whole thing was a journey in itself. But once I did realize that, then I started thinking about what is it then that I can do about it. And finding an answer to that question was, again, not very easy. So I went to my parents and I asked them the same thing, what do you think I can do in my own life about climate change? And we decided to start from our own home. My family and I, we took up a very simple pledge to reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions by 10% every year. And so we started researching on which activities of mine are leading to most emissions. How could I reduce them? How could I measure them? And a few months into this journey, something interesting happened. Is that so many of my friends, my neighbors, relatives started to take notice. People started to come to me saying that, you're doing something different, something interesting, and we would like to be a part of this. That's when I started thinking about how can I take global citizens on this quest with me. And from this, the idea for Cool the Globe was born. So we decided to build an app which would help ordinary citizens like you and I reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions to a target. So what I realized was that in order to achieve anything at all, I need two things. I need a clear goal in front of me, and I need to be able to measure my goal. So that's sort of the idea with which we built on this app as well. As soon as a user comes in, they're given a clear monthly and an annual target to reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions. And then people can see from a host of simple day-to-day climate actions they can take in order to meet those targets. And they can see the emissions they are avoiding with those actions. So for example, office is 10 kilometers away and I go by cycle instead of going by car. I can see that I saved 2 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. If I did not use AC for an entire day, I can see that I saved 5 kg of emissions. If I did not buy 2 pairs of jeans, I can see that I saved 10 kg of emissions. So I can see the impact I'm making with these simple actions. But then a lot of people think, what difference can one person make? I think that when there are a lot of people who come together, then a collective impact can be very big. And to showcase that, we kept a global meter on the homepage of the app, which will show the collective emissions avoided by everybody combined. And so throughout, we worked. Once the idea for the app was in our head, I convinced our director at the time to let me work on this crazy project instead of while also doing my college. And we worked like crazy. In building this, we learned everything we had to on our own. We learned coding, we did the research, and we worked like madmen to build it was ready. But when it was ready, I realized that the real work has only just begun. The real work is in actually telling people that we can make a difference in the face of big problems like climate change. And so then we started making very simple video campaigns on what we can do in our day-to-day lives. And those campaigns were really picked up by people. So, people started sharing it with their friends shared it with their friends. And before we knew it, millions of citizens from around the world were watching those video campaigns. So we got support from policymakers, entrepreneurs, media organizations. But even more than that, we really got support from ordinary citizens from around the world. So, a 9-year-old girl emailed me saying that she doesn't have a phone yet, but she still wants something. So she asked me, what change can I make in my life to fight climate change? Had called me and said that he had repaired his cycle to start going to his office every day by cycle. Avoid 60 kg of emissions by doing this. An 80-year-old woman called me and she said that she was going to purchase 3 new saris for her granddaughter's wedding. She had decided and
Prachi, I'm realizing there is a bandwidth issue. Your voice is becoming more choppy. Is that just me, guys, or everybody's feeling that?
Yeah, it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little better.
Now I
Yeah.
can hear you. Yeah, your video had gone still and your voice was choppy, but now it is okay. So continue, please continue.
Okay. Where did you lose me?
I think your sentence was okay. It was just getting chopped in between. So we didn't lose you completely, by the way.
Okay,
The old women saris, yeah.
Right. So many people like that, just started getting in touch and started telling me stories of simple things they were doing in their day-to-day life. And all of them were so happy to see that, these simple actions they were taking was making a difference some way or the other. So throughout the, since the launch of the app, so many people from around the world came like this. Today we have users from over 100 countries coming together to take climate actions. And all of these people combined have avoided 1 million kg of greenhouse gas emissions through taking these simple changes in their day-to-day life. So that's kind of been a very extraordinary journey of people like you and I around the world, making small things in their life for a larger collective impact.
So that's very good. And again, I will remind guys, if you have any question, just post it on the text and we'll pick up your questions. We can probably ask you to repeat your questions. But if you have any questions, and I'm sure all of you have a lot of questions, please post that on the chat, and we'll take it from there. But Prachi, I want to get to the product side, a product as a venture side. As you said, you have achieved quite good accolades from starting an initiative. But there's a long way to go. How are you doing this from resource perspective? Are you bootstrapping? Do you have support from businesses, investors? How are you doing this as a business?
Right, absolutely. So when we started Cool the Globe, when I decided that this is something that I want to work on, that time there was no scope for earning revenue out of it right away, or even sustenance. So one of the first things I started looking at was, then how is it that I'm going to sustain myself and the team? So when we decided that we wanted to work on Cool the Globe, we started looking at, what are the other revenue sources around us through which we could also sustain. So we had a very small team of 3 people at the time. And what we did was we called up other social initiatives around us, organizations who are working in sustainability, who are working in this space. And we asked them if we could run their campaigns for them as well. We were already working on campaigns for Cool the Globe. And so we called up around 10 such organizations. 7 of them called us in for a pitch, and 5 of them were our first 5 clients. So for a very large part of Cool the Globe, we sustain ourselves by working with organizations like that, running their communications for them. And through this, that side also grew slowly, and through this really helped us keep working on Cool the Globe as well. Then after launch, what the interesting thing that happened was we started getting so many calls from organizations asking if we could do this for them as well. And we started getting a lot of calls from users as well, saying that, I'm doing this as an individual. My organization also would be interested in coming on board as a community. And a lot of organizations started coming in touch, getting in touch, asking if we could they could have cool the globe for their organization as well. So one of the things that we are developing now is to get cool the globe for teams, which would help organizations drive sustainability within their employees, and be able to track the collective emissions avoided by their workforce. So that's one of the growing areas where we would move along the way. A lot of organizations also started approaching us on how we could help drive their sustainable initiatives. So consulting and training also grew from that. So these few things have helped sustain the small team. We have a team of about 7 people now. Um, uh, but what also started happening was so many citizens came to us and said that we're really interested in what we're doing and we would like to be a part of this in some way. So over the years, we've had 100 plus citizen volunteers and advocates who have helped build Cool the Globe into what it is. So many advisors, mentors from around the world who are, can you hear me?
Very nice.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
who have helped grow it into,
no, that is,
right, into what
that's
it is
very
today. Yeah.
No, I was saying that is very good that you have figured out with the social cause, whatever your mantra was, whatever your vision and mission and initiative was, you found out the revenue side also, the business side as well, that somebody is funding it. And I'm sure you can have so many more sources to generate your revenue and go bigger and bolder. By the way, I want to bring a question from Ganesh Gaikwad. I remember Ganesh Gaikwad is very big supporter of sustainability, sustainable development. So this is his question. Ganesh, do you want to open your mic and ask the question yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very clearly.
Yeah, okay. So, Prachi, first of all, congratulations for your initiative, and
Thank you
it
so
is really remarkable. Yeah.
much.
I can very well relate to your experience because my kids also passed out from Aksharandan, so I'm that
Wow,
old.
really? Wow.
Okay. They are very proud of that school. They are very proud of that school. Yeah,
Wow.
and you mentioned about Daneshwar Godke, and I hope you also probably connected with Sancheti sisters from your school again, who are doing the sustainable farming experiments near Pune.
I did.
Anyway, my question is, yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
I've just gone to meet
Yeah.
them a few months ago.
Right. They are not very famous, but I think their work is very, very good. Okay.
Amazing.
So, yeah, what I was trying to ask you is about the application and the whole movement, right? So, I had a very technical question, considering the number of users, concurrent number of users, the amount of network you have to consume, the server side electricity, energy consumption, and maintaining that and creating new content, videos, all that, right? What is the footprint of your application? All that activity, have you calculated that?
Right. That's a good question actually, and that's actually one of the first things we started looking at. But I should also say here that Cool the Globe is not a carbon footprint calculator; it's an emissions avoided calculator. So there are quite a few applications that would calculate your carbon footprint, and we decided to go another route because we wanted people to be able to take actions right away. So when we get to measuring carbon footprint, it's a very long process. You have to answer about 100 questions to get that right, and before you answer that questions, you're already bored. So once people come in Cool the Globe, they can start taking actions right away through what they have avoided, what they have saved, rather than their carbon footprint. They look at their avoided emissions. So that's what the app does. And when we started building it, we also ran some calculations on what could be the carbon footprint, what could be the emissions because of the servers, the users, and we had come up with a very crude number of what could be the emission per user. And we were looking at whether we should include that in one of the actions, but the number came out to be considerably negligible compared to the actions the users were taking. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I would be happy to share it with the group. Now, like when we ran those calculations, we had no idea that we would have these many number of users. So the calculations we had taken were for what per person, what would be the footprint, as per the time they spend on the app. So we did have those calculations, and we did consider even putting device time in as one of the climate actions in the app. But the emissions that were getting avoided by that were very small compared to the other actions, so we decided against that. But yes, I'd be happy to share those numbers with you. And that's a very relevant question again, on what is the carbon using time on the app as well.
Your voice is not clear. We are hearing more wind.
Yeah. I was not speaking. I think someone else was speaking. But
Oh, okay.
Thanks for that. And I would be interested to know that number. And
Definitely.
it is, yeah, it will be curious figure to know. Thank you. Yeah.
No, I want to know
Very good.
who what are the names of your children? I might know them. Our school was very small. Usually
Yeah,
everyone would know
my
everyone.
son, my daughter is Tanvi Gaikwad, and my son is Yash. He is now in 12th, and my daughter is in the second year of the college.
Oh wow! I think I have heard of her. Say hi to her.
Oh,
So nice.
yeah, sure. We'll offline connect, no problem. Thank you.
Definitely.
That's very good. Prachi, real quick, how many users have you inspired through your initiative so far?
So we have 24,000 users on the app right now,
Very
and I think touching 25,000 as we speak.
Right. So about your vision going forward, this is your starting point. The initiative of Cool the Globe and having the grassroots involvement is your starting point. I'm trying to guess. What is your end game? Where do you want to go from here?
Right. So we started with the belief that climate action can be made easy to and accessible for everybody. And that's the end goal as well, to have climate action become an easy, accessible, and a happy process for citizens as well as organizations. So for citizens, it doesn't have to be revolving around sacrificing. It could be something satisfying that you're doing in your life. And for organizations, it doesn't have to be revolving around an activity that you do that costs you money. We want to integrate climate action in the process of organizations in a way that is profitable, that it makes sense in the long run. I think the end goal is to just seamlessly integrate sustainability and climate action in our lives, that it aligns with all our other goals as well. So when I started this journey, just as an individual quest that I had begun with my family, and today we have citizens around the world supporting us, citizen advocates, students, mentors, advisors, organizational partners. So many people have joined in, and because of their backing, we can dream big. And that's the dream, to inspire citizens to be able to make a difference in their day-to-day life, and empower organizations to integrate sustainability in a way that it aligns with their other goals as well.
So if I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, so you won't, as your part of the journey, you won't go towards influencing policymakers or fighting against bad policies and getting those changed. Means, look, you are at the grassroots level. There is a lot of things has to happen top down as well. The policies are one very big, you can call it hurdle, but it can become very good incentive for individual to take, natural action.
Absolutely.
Won't you go towards that?
That's a very relevant question. And so, one of one citizen, one user had emailed me recently, and he said, he had come across our initiative and was very inspired by that, and that led him to sending emails to his Nagar Sevaks in his community, asking them what they were doing about sustainability, how they could integrate sustainability in their society, in their region. So what I experience is that when we start from ourselves, it creates a ripple effect, larger changes as well. It sort of um, your a lot of changes, like climate change is a very big this thing, very big. So many things need to happen, from carbon capture and storage to efficiency, um, to um, to industry. So many stakeholders are involved. So those things are right now beyond my control. What's in my control is me and the people around me. And what I have experienced also is that when I start from myself, it trickles down there. From rather than it trickling down from top to bottom, it can trickle from bottom to the top as well, like wildfire, in fact. So many policymakers also approached me asking what they could do for climate change, and those conversations have also started. People don't like when you tell them what they have to do. People like when you tell them, this is what I'm doing and you can join me. And I've so far I found that to be an effective path forward. So I feel like if we keep doing this, those changes will also happen.
So just a quick time check. Ravi and Nimesh, if I'm right, we have just few more minutes left. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to open my last question. Prachi, what do you expect this group to do to help your cause, or to align with whatever your mission is, or whatever the problem statement you just mentioned? How can we as a group do to help your cause?
That's possibly my favorite question always. And so many things, because where we are today is only because of people like you, who have come in and made Cool the Globe into what it is today. If I was alone, if there's one thing that I've learned, that I can't do anything alone, and I don't have to do anything alone. So one thing I would tell you, that Cool the Globe has always been a citizen-led platform. It's always grown because of people like you coming in and helping. So there are many areas in which we in fact require support, and we would love for all of you to join in. I would start with some specific immediate areas, that are some key challenges in front of us right now, and then some very long-term areas where we would love to have support from all of you. It could be something as simple as perfecting our pitch, perfecting how we present Cool the Globe, because so many of you have a design background. How best could we present ourselves? Making a really good, strong pitch for Cool the Globe, from a design or a visual perspective. So that's one area. Another area, like I said, we are now opening up Cool the Globe for teams, and even the Cool the Globe app we have right now is something that we built on our own. The key motivation behind it is to make climate action easy, and that could only happen when the app is easy to work around. So there are many things in terms of UX, UI, in making the journey better for the user, in just making the experience of the app easier. So there are many areas of improvement there, which I'm sure a lot of you could help with. And even designing what Cool the Globe for Teams look like, how communities can come on board for this app, or just looking through the platform and giving suggestions on what more could we do. And from a resource standpoint, how we now understand what we have to do, but how we could actually do that is also a challenge. Other than that, one of the most important things I've learned is that through this journey, my vision of what is possible has expanded. So I know today some things that I didn't know a few years back, and I know that a few years down the line, I would know some things that I don't know today. So there could be many other areas, opportunities that I don't know that you would see. So I would welcome you to come on board as mentors, advisors, or just people who show us a vision, show us a new path, show us what we could be. So there are many areas. I would just love to have you even as well wishers, and just advocates of what we are trying to do. But thank you so much for asking that question. And I hope this session is just the beginning of a very long association between all of us.
No, thank you very much. And I think what you're asking is very, very natural. You have not asked for charitable giving or money part. But I think I will share this video along with some more information about you so that people who are inspired to help you will reach out to you. And of course, this is not the end of the topic or subject or our interaction with you. We would love to stay in touch. So at the end, thank you very much for your time. And everybody else who joined, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you so much everyone for joining. And I'm also putting in my contact details. So if anybody wants to get in touch with,
I have your contact number, I have your WhatsApp, I have your email address, website, all of those things I'll share with the forum. Again, Prachi, thank you very much and all the best. All the best.
Thank you so much. Nice
all right,
to
thank you.
you.
And
Thanks,
thank you, everybody.
Prachi.